The Great Hall of Station Prime was the largest room ever built by any species in the known galaxy. Its walls were made of living crystal that changed color with the mood of those inside. Today, the crystals glowed a cold, hostile blue. Admiral Taiwu Park stood alone on a small platform at the center of the hall. Around him, rising up like the inside of a massive bowl, sat the representatives of 847 different species. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some had no bodies at all and existed only as clouds of thinking gas. But they all had one thing in common today. They all hated humanity. Taiwu was 63 years old. He had gray hair cut short in military style and eyes that had seen too many battles. He wore the simple black uniform of the United Earth Navy, with no medals or decorations. He had removed them this morning. He knew what was coming, and he wanted to face it with dignity. The speaker for the assembly was a tall, thin creature called Orith. He belonged to the Vaulat species, beings of perfect beauty who had never known war on their home world. They had soft blue skin, large dark eyes, and voices like music. They also believed themselves to be the most civilized beings in the universe. They had pushed hardest for this vote. Orith raised his four-fingered hand for silence. The hall, which had been filled with the sounds of 100 different languages, went quiet. "The vote has been counted," Orith announced. His voice echoed through the chamber. 841 species have voted in favor. 6 have voted against. The motion passes. Taiwu did not move. He had expected this. Earth and all human colonies are hereby banned from the Galactic Assembly permanently. Orith continued. Human ships will not be permitted beyond your solar system. Any human vessel found in assembly space will be destroyed without warning. Your communication channels with other species will be terminated. You will be alone as you deserve to be. The hall filled with sounds of approval. Creatures clicked, whistled, roared, and hummed their satisfaction. 2 centuries of fear and hatred toward humanity had finally found its release. Taiwu thought about what had brought them here. When humans first reached the stars, they had been so hopeful. They thought they would find friends among the alien species. Instead, they found a galaxy that had watched Earth for thousands of years and decided that humans were too dangerous to be free. The assembly had pointed to human history, the wars, the weapons, the way humans could adapt to almost any environment and survive almost any injury. They called humanity a persistent species and did not mean it as a compliment. To the assembly, humans were like a disease that could not be killed. For 200 years, Earth had tried to prove them wrong. They had followed every rule. They had limited their population. They had dismantled most of their weapons. They had begged for a chance to show that. Humanity had changed. The assembly had never even considered it. Orith looked down at Taiwu with something like pity. Admiral Park, do you wish to make a final statement before we conclude these proceedings? Taiwu looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at him. Some looked satisfied. Some looked afraid. A few, very few, looked sad. He thought about his daughter Jian, who commanded Earth's small defense fleet. He thought about President Wu Zhanshou, waiting in his office on Earth for news he already knew would be bad. He thought about the 7 billion humans who would wake up tomorrow and learn that the universe had decided they did not deserve to exist. Then Taiwu smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had kept a secret for a very long time and was finally allowed to let it go. Yes, he said. I have a statement. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small communication device. It was old technology by galactic standards, but it worked. He pressed a single button and spoke 3 words clearly into it. They chose poorly. Then he put the device away and looked back up at Orith. That is all. Orith frowned. His beautiful face twisted with confusion. What does that mean? Who did you contact? Earth Command, Taiwu replied calmly. I have just informed them that the quiet protocol is now in effect. Murmurs spread through the hall. No one knew what the quiet protocol was. That was the point. What is this protocol? Orith demanded. Taiwu clasped his hands behind his back. Nothing you need to worry about. You have made your decision. You have voted to erase humanity from the galaxy. I am simply informing my people that we accept your terms. You accept banishment? No. Taiwu's smile grew wider. We accept war. The hall exploded with noise. Creatures shouted, screamed, and laughed. War? Earth had 12 ships. The assembly had millions. It was absurd. It was suicide. It was the desperate threat of a doomed species. Aerith raised his hands for quiet. When the noise finally died down, he looked at Taiwu with genuine amusement. Admiral, Earth cannot fight us. You know this. Your species is brave, I will admit that. But bravery does not win wars. Numbers win wars. Technology wins wars. You have neither. Perhaps, Taiwu said. But we have something else. And what is that? Patience. Taiwu turned and began walking toward the exit. You have feared us for 200 years, Aerith. You were right to be afraid. You just never understood why. 2 guards moved to stop him, but Aerith waved them away. There was no point. Where could one human go? As Taiwu walked out of the great hall, the crystals in the walls flickered. For just a moment, they turned from cold blue to angry red. Then they returned to normal. No one noticed on Earth. In a bunker deep beneath the mountains of Korea, Fleet Commander Jian Kong received her father's message. She read it 3 times to make sure she understood. Then she picked up her own communicator and called President Wu Jinchou. Sir, she said, my father has confirmed. The vote went as expected. There was a long silence on the other end. Then the president spoke.
Oh.
Begin the awakening. All shipyards. All weapons programs. Everything we have hidden for 90 years? Yes, sir. Gion paused. Sir, once we do this, there is no going back. I know. The president's voice was tired, but firm. They had a choice, Commander. They could have accepted us. They could have given us a chance. Instead, they chose to kill us slowly in a prison of our own solar system. I will not let my species die in a cage. Understood, sir. Gin ended the call and looked at the officers around her. They were young, determined, and ready. They had trained their entire lives for this moment. Send the signal, she ordered. Wake them all up. Deep in the asteroid belts of the solar system, lights began to turn on in places that had been dark for decades. Massive doors opened in rocks that everyone thought were empty. Ships that no one knew existed began to power up their engines, the galaxy thought. Humanity was finished. They were wrong. 1 week after the vote, every screen in the galaxy turned on at the same time. It happened without warning. On 1,000 different worlds, in 1,000,000 different homes and offices and ships, displays flickered and changed. Personal devices, public broadcasts, military communications, even the secure channels of the assembly itself. All of them showed the same thing, a human woman with short black hair and calm dark eyes. Her name was Yuna Shin, and she was Earth's Minister of Interstellar Affairs. She sat at a simple desk with nothing behind her except the blue and green flag of United Earth. She wore a plain gray suit. She did not look angry or afraid. She looked like someone about to deliver news she had practiced saying for years. My name is Yuna Shin, she began. I speak for Earth and for all of humanity. I am addressing every species in the Galactic Assembly. Across the galaxy, creatures stopped what they were doing and stared. How was this possible? The Assembly's communication networks were supposed to be unhackable. Their scientists had designed them to be immune to any form of intrusion. Yet here was a human, speaking through all of them at once. 1 week ago, Yuna continued, your assembly voted to ban Earth from the galactic community. You sentenced 7 billion humans to permanent isolation. You declared that we have no right to explore, to trade, to communicate, or to exist beyond our own solar system. You did this without evidence of any crime. You did this because you were afraid of what we might become. On Station Prime, Aerith watched the broadcast from his private chambers. His beautiful face was twisted with disbelief. He kept pressing buttons, trying to change the channel, trying to shut off the signal. Nothing worked. For 200 years, We followed your rules, Una said. We limited ourselves. We stayed quiet. We begged for acceptance. And in return, you watched us suffer and did nothing. You blocked our medicine. You denied us technology. You let our children die of diseases you cured centuries ago because you did not want us to grow strong. Her voice remained steady, but there was something hard in her eyes now. We remember everything. We remember the trade agreements that robbed us. We remember the diplomats who lied to us. We remember the ships full of refugees you turned away, the colony requests you denied, the screaming children in our hospitals that your doctors refused to help. She leaned forward slightly. And now you have voted to kill us slowly, to trap us in our own solar system until we fade away. You thought we would accept this? You thought we would bow our heads and wait to die, Una smiled. It was the same smile her Admiral Taiwu had, shown in the assembly hall, cold, patient, dangerous. We're wrong. She straightened in her chair. The United Earth. Government formally rejects the authority of the Galactic Assembly. We do not recognize your laws. We do not accept your judgment. And we do not fear your armies. The galaxy held its breath. As of this moment, Earth declares war on the Galactic Assembly. All 847 member species. This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. This is a promise. You tried to erase us. Now we will teach you why that was a mistake. The broadcast ended. Screens across the galaxy returned to normal. For several long seconds, no one moved. No one spoke. Then the laughter began. On 100 different worlds, creatures laughed at the absurdity of it. Earth declaring war on the entire galaxy? It was a joke. It had to be a joke. Earth had 12 old warships and a few million soldiers. The Assembly had the largest military force in history. This would not be a war. It would be an execution. Grand Admiral Velith, commander of all Assembly forces, received the news while eating his morning meal. He was a Torvani, a species of large, powerful beings covered in thick gray scales. His people had fought and won more wars than any other species in the Assembly. He knew combat. He knew strategy. And he knew that humans had just signed their own death warrant. Prepare a fleet, he ordered his officers. 100 ships should be enough. We will blockade their solar system and starve them into surrender within a month. But not everyone was laughing. On the cold mining world of Riva 7, an old alien named Kothis watched the broadcast twice. He was a Morvani, a species that had been conquered by the Assembly 400 years ago. His people had learned long ago that the Assembly was not kind to those who were different. They are not joking, Kothis said to his son. Look at her eyes. She has been waiting to say those words for a long time. But father, what can they do? They are only humans. Kothis shook his head. I have studied humans. They are strange creatures. They do not surrender. They do not give up. And they have been very, very quiet for 90 years. That worries me. Son did not understand. But he would. Soon everyone would, deep in the asteroid belt of Earth's solar system. Captain Sung-Ho Lee stood on the bridge of the Defiance. It was the largest warship ever built by human hands. 3 kilometers long, covered in weapons that had no names in any alien language. Powered by engines that should not have been possible, and it was not alone. Around the Defiance, floating in the darkness between rocks, were 199 identical ships. The first fleet of the United Earth Navy, hidden and waiting for this moment. Sung-Ho was 45 years old, with broad shoulders and a face that rarely smiled. He had joined the Navy as a young man, back when Earth's fleet was a joke. He had watched his friends die in accidents caused by Assembly sabotage. He had seen good officers passed over because the Assembly did not want humans to have capable military. Leaders now he commanded more firepower than most species had in their entire history. Sir, his communications officer said, we have received the confirmation signal from Earth Command. Operation Broken Crown is authorized. Sung-Ho nodded slowly. He looked at the main screen, which showed a map of the galaxy with 12 points marked in red. Those were the core worlds of the Assembly, the planets where the real power lived. The worlds that had never known war because they always made others fight for them. Send the signal to all fleet commanders, he ordered. We move in 6 hours. Yes, sir. Sir? The officer hesitated. We are really doing this? Attacking all 12 core worlds at once? Sung-ho turned to look at her. They thought we were weak. They thought we were beaten. They have no idea what we've built out here in the dark. No idea what we sacrificed. He turned back to the screen. For 90 years, we worked in secret. We trained. We prepared. We waited. And now, it is time to show them exactly how wrong they were. In the briefing room behind the bridge, Strategic Intelligence Officer Ming-Gi Han was explaining the plan to the other commanders. She was small, with sharp eyes, and a mind that never stopped working. The Assembly expects us to fight defensively, she said. They think we will hide behind our planetary defenses and hope for mercy. We are going to do the opposite. We are going to attack everywhere at once, hit targets they thought were untouchable, and make them afraid. What about their numbers? One commander asked. They have millions of ships. Minji smiled. They have millions of ships scattered across thousands of systems. It will take them weeks to gather them together. By then, we will have changed everything. The commanders looked at each other. Some were afraid. Some were excited. All of them were ready. 6 hours later, 200 human warships jumped to faster than light speed and scattered. Across the galaxy like seeds of chaos, the war had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. The Vaulat homeworld had never been attacked. In 10,000 years of recorded history, no enemy had ever reached its peaceful blue shores. The planet was protected by the most advanced defense grid in the galaxy, a network of weapons, platforms and shields that could destroy any fleet foolish enough to approach. Lieutenant Do Yan-yu was not part of a fleet. He was part of a team of 12 humans crawling through a maintenance tunnel 300 meters below the main defense control station. The tunnel was not designed for creatures as large as humans. It was meant for the small repair robots that kept the station running. Do-yan had been crawling on his stomach for 6 hours. His arms ached. His knees were bleeding through his suit. The air was thin and hot. He did not complain. None of his team complained. They had trained for this for years. They had learned to survive in conditions that would kill most species in minutes. Low oxygen, extreme temperatures, crushing pressure. Humans were not the strongest or the fastest creatures in the galaxy, but they were the most stubborn. 200 meters to the control room, whispered Sergeant Boyoung Kim through the radio. She was just ahead of Do-yan, her small body moving through the tunnel like a snake. Guards. Do-yan checked the scanner on his wrist. For Vaulat security officers, light weapons. No armor. Easy. They were not wrong. When the team burst out of the maintenance hatch 20 minutes later, the Vaulat guards barely had time to scream. The humans moved with terrible speed, using weapons that made no sound and left no bodies that could trigger alarms. Within seconds, the room was secure. Do-yan's hands flew over the control panel. The Vaulat had never thought to make their security systems resistant to human hacking because they'd never imagined humans would reach this room. It took him 3 minutes to shut down the entire defense grid. Above the planet, the Vaulat fleet received hundreds of warning alerts at once. Their shields were down. Their weapons were offline. They were completely defenseless. And then the human ships arrived. Captain. Sung-ho Lee watched from the bridge of the Defiance as the Vaulat scrambled to respond. Their beautiful white ships were fast and elegant, designed more for show than for fighting. They had never needed to be anything else. Do not fire on their civilian vessels, Sung-ho ordered. Military targets only. Disable. Do not destroy unless necessary. It was over in less than an hour. The pride of the Vaulat fleet, 300 ships that had never known defeat, surrendered without firing a single effective shot. Do-yan and his team were extracted safely, already preparing for their next mission. But the attack on the Vaulat was only one part of the plan. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Human strike teams appeared in places that should have been impossible to reach. They sabotaged shipyards, disabled communication networks, and assassinated military commanders who thought they were safe in their fortified bunkers. Commander Hannah Beek led the most devastating attack of all. She commanded a small squadron of specialized ships carrying something the humans called kinetic packages. These were simple objects, really just dense metal rods with guidance systems. But when accelerated to near light speed and aimed at the right targets, they became weapons of terrible power. Hannah's target was not a planet or a fleet. It was the central financial hub. It's a massive space station where the assembly kept the records of every transaction in galactic history. Without those records, no one could prove who owed what to whom. Banks could not verify accounts. Corporations could not confirm contracts. The entire economic system of the galaxy depended on that station. "Package away," Hannah said calmly as the first rod launched from her ship. The rod took only seconds to reach its target. When it hit, it carried more energy than a nuclear bomb, but it did not explode. It simply punched through the station like a needle through paper. Destroying the data cores inside, Hannah launched 11 more rods in quick succession, each hitting a different section of the massive station. When she was finished, 40% of the galaxy's financial records were gone forever. The economic chaos began within hours. Markets crashed. Supply ships stopped moving because no one could pay them. Factories shut down because they could not buy materials. The assembly, which had never worried about money because they controlled all of it, suddenly found themselves unable to fund their own war. Grand Admiral Velith received the reports in his command center and felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. How is this possible? He demanded. They are humans. They have no fleet. They have no technology. They are nothing. His intelligence officer, a nervous creature with too many eyes, handed him another report. Sir, we are receiving word from 17 species in the Outer Rim. They are withdrawing from the assembly. What? They claim the war is not their concern. Some of them are, the officer hesitated. Some of them are providing supplies to the humans. Velith crushed the report in his massive fist. For 200 years, the assembly had kept certain species weak and obedient through carefully controlled trade and occasional threats. Those species remembered every insult, every unfair treaty, every time they had been treated as lesser beings. And now they saw a chance for revenge. Ambassador Junho Quan had spent months traveling in secret to those worlds, promising them a better future if they helped humanity. He was a small man, with a gentle voice, the kind of person enemies underestimated until it was too late. He did not ask the aliens to fight. He only asked them to stop helping the assembly. Some of them decided to do more, the more veiny. The species that had been conquered 400 years ago began smuggling weapons to human forces. The Tessari, who had been denied membership in the assembly because of their appearance, provided intelligence about enemy fleet movements. The Korvathi, whose homeworld had been stripped of resources to feed assembly factories, offered their planet as a hidden base. 17 species. Then 23. Then 31. The galaxy was not as united as the assembly believed, on Earth. President Woojin Cho watched the reports coming in from across the stars. He was an old man now, tired from decades of fighting a battle no one else could see. He had worked his entire life for this moment, building the secret fleet, recruiting the hidden allies, preparing humanity for a war they never wanted but always knew would come. "Hey, sir," his aide said, "the assembly has issued a formal response to our attacks. They are calling for total war. Every species is ordered to mobilize against Earth." Woojin nodded. "Expected. What else?" "They are surprised, sir. Very surprised. Their reports show complete confusion about how we accomplish these attacks. They do not understand our technology. They do not understand our tactics. They do not understand us at all." Good Woojin stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city was quiet. Most people had no idea what was happening in the distant stars. They would learn soon enough. For 200 years. They watched us and thought they understood. They saw. Violent, primitive, dangerous. They never realized that we were also patient, We let them see what they expected to see, while we built something new in the shadows. What happens now, sir? Woojin turned back to face his aide. Now comes the hard part. We have surprised them. We have hurt them. But the assembly has resources we cannot match. They will recover. They will organize. And when they do, they will come for us with everything they have. Can we win? The president was quiet for a long moment. I do not know, but I know this. We will not be erased. We will not be forgotten. Whatever happens, the galaxy will remember that humans do not go quietly. Somewhere in deep space, Sung Ho Lee received new orders. The first phase was complete. Now the real war would begin. He looked at the stars on his view screen and wondered how many of them would still be burning when this was over. Then he gave the order to move, and his fleet disappeared into the darkness between worlds. 3 years into the war, General Hun Wuxin stood on the surface of the Vaulat homeworld and watched his soldiers march through the capital city. The streets were empty. The beautiful white buildings, which had stood for thousands of years, were undamaged. The fountains still flowed with clear water. The gardens still bloomed with flowers that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Everything was exactly as it had been before the war, except for one thing. The Vaulat were gone. Not dead. Gone. Evacuated to safe zones outside the city, where human medical teams were providing food, water, and shelter. The same humans that the Vaulat had voted to destroy were now protecting Vaulat children from the chaos of war. Hyun Woo was 52 years old, career soldier who had fought in more battles than he could count. He had seen terrible things. He had done terrible things. War demanded that. But today, walking through this silent city, he felt something he had not expected. Pride. Sir, his aide called out. We have secured the government district. Arith has been located. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. Arith, the Vaulat delegate who had stood before the assembly and announced humanity's banishment. The being who had smiled while sentencing 7 billion people to slow death. For 3 years, human soldiers had dreamed of finding him. Bring him to me, Hyunwoo ordered. When Arith arrived, he did not look like the proud, beautiful creature who had addressed the galaxy. His blue skin was pale. His large eyes were full of fear. His fine clothes were dirty and torn. He had been hiding in a basement when human soldiers found him. General Shin, Arith said, his musical voice cracking. I surrender. I claim protection under galactic law. Hyunwoo stared at him for a long moment. Galactic law. You mean the same laws that said my people have no rights? The same laws that allowed you to ban us, blockade us, and leave us to die? Arith flinched. That was different. You are humans. You are dangerous. We were protecting ourselves. We were dangerous. Hyunwoo stepped closer, and Arith stepped back. We are dangerous. And yet here we stand in your capital city, and your people are unharmed. Your children are being fed by human doctors. Your elderly are being cared for by human nurses. We could have burned this world to ash. We have the power. We have the right, by your own laws of war. He leaned in close to Arith's face. But we didn't. Do you know why? Arith shook his head, unable to speak. Because we are not you. Hyunwoo stepped back and turned to his soldiers. Take him to the detention center. Make sure he is treated well. He will stand trial after the war, and the galaxy will see that humans give justice even to those who gave us none. As Arith was led away, Hyunwoo's communicator buzzed. It was Fleet Commander Jian Kong calling from the bridge of the Defiance in orbit above the planet. General, we have word from Grand Admiral Velith. He is requesting a meeting. A meeting. After 3 years of trying to exterminate us? The assembly is falling apart, Jian said. 43 species have now joined our coalition. Another 100 have declared neutrality. Velith commands less than half the fleet he started with, and he is running out of supplies. I believe he wants to negotiate. Hyunwoo looked up at the sky where human ships moved like distant stars. 3 years ago, those ships had been hidden in asteroids. Now they controlled a third of the galaxy. Where does he want to meet? Neutral station. Horizon's edge. Just him and you. Or whoever you choose to send, I will go myself. 3 days later, Gion Kong walked into the meeting room on Horizon's edge. She had decided to go instead of Hyunwoo. This was a Navy matter, and she was the fleet commander. Besides, she wanted to look into Velith's eyes herself. The Grand Admiral was waiting for her. He was even larger in person than she had expected. A mountain of gray scales and muscle that had commanded the greatest military force in galactic history. But his eyes were tired. His scales had lost their shine. He looked like a creature who had been fighting a battle he no longer understood. "Fleet Commander Kang," he said, his deep voice filling the room, "I have studied your career." Impressive for someone from such a young species. "Thank you. I have studied yours as well." Less impressive recently, Beleth made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You humans. Even now, you cannot resist mocking your enemies." "We can resist many things," Gion said, taking a seat across from him. "That is why we are here, and your assembly is breaking apart." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Velith leaned forward. "I need to understand something. 3 years ago, you had 12 ships. 12. We had millions. How did you do this? How did you build a fleet capable of challenging the entire galaxy without anyone noticing?" Gion considered the question. "We started 90 years ago, after the Assembly rejected our third application for membership. Our leaders realized then that you would never accept us. So they began planning for the day when you would try to destroy us. But where did you find the resources? The materials? The scientists? We used what we had. Asteroids, comets, the metal in our own planet that we were supposed to be mining for you. As for scientists," Gan smiled, "your species banned us from learning your technology. So we invented our own. Some of it is better than yours. Some of it is different in ways you still do not understand. Humans are creative when we are desperate." Velith shook his massive head. "We watched you for 200 years. We saw nothing. You saw what we wanted you to see. Primitive, violent, dangerous. We played the role you expected because it kept you comfortable. Comfortable species do not look too closely at things that unthreatening. We underestimated you. Badly." Another silence. Then Velith asked the question that had been burning in him since the war began. "Why did you not destroy us? You could have. When your fleet arrived at our core worlds, you could have burned them all. You had the power. After what we did to you, no one would have blamed you. But instead, you." He struggled to find the words. "You showed mercy. 2 species that showed you none. Why?" Gion was quiet for a long moment. She thought about her father, Admiral Taiwu, who had stood alone in the assembly hall and smiled at those who condemned his people. She thought about Hyunwoo's soldiers, who fought brutal battles and then handed out food to enemy civilians. She thought about Dr. Yoonji Park, who had left a comfortable life on Earth to run humanitarian missions on conquered worlds. "Because that is the difference between us," she finally said. "You voted to erase us out of fear. You looked at humanity and saw only our violence, our history, our potential for destruction. You never saw our capacity for compassion, our ability to forgive, our stubborn, ridiculous belief that even our enemies deserve to be treated with dignity." She leaned forward. "We did not fight this war because we hate you. We fought because you gave us no other choice, and we chose to fight it in a way that proves we are worthy of the stars you tried to deny us." Velith stared at her for a long time. Then slowly he nodded. "The assembly is finished," he said. "I cannot hold it together any longer. Too many species have lost faith. Too many have joined your coalition. I am here to discuss terms of surrender." Gillen felt her heart pound, but she kept her face calm. "What terms do you propose?" "Whatever you want. I only ask that you do not punish the species who fought against you. They were following orders. They were afraid. They did not know what else to do." "We are not interested in punishment," Gion said. "We are interested in building something new. A galaxy where no species is banned, no world is blockaded, and no people are left to die because others fear them."
Oh.
Velith closed his eyes. You truly believe such a galaxy is possible? I believe we have to try. The Grand Admiral opened his eyes and looked at the human woman across from him. She was small compared to him, fragile, a creature from a planet that had been dismissed as unimportant for most of galactic history. And she had beaten him. Then let us try, he said. Together, the war was not over yet. But for the first time since it began, peace seemed possible. The Treaty of Sol was signed on a space station orbiting Earth. 5 years after humanity had declared war on the galaxy, the station was new. Built in the final months of the conflict as a symbol of hope, its design included elements from every species that had joined the human coalition, creating a structure that looked like it had grown from the dreams of 100 different worlds. Crystals from Velen, metal from Torva, living plants from Tessara, all of it woven together by human engineers who had learned that the best things are built with many hands. President Yoongi Beek stood at the podium in the main chamber, looking out at the gathered representatives. He was younger than most war presidents, only 47, but the war had aged him beyond his years. His black hair was streaked with gray. His eyes carried the weight of decisions that had cost millions of lives. Behind him stood the heroes of the conflict. Fleet Commander Jian Kong, who had won a dozen impossible battles. Captain Sung Ho Lee, whose fleet had become legend. General Hunhua Xin, who had conquered worlds without destroying them. Minister Yuna Xin, whose broadcast had started everything. And Admiral Taiwu Park, the old man who had stood alone in the assembly hall and smiled at those who condemned his people. Taiwu was 80 now, retired from active duty, but still standing tall in his old uniform. He had lived to see something he once thought impossible: humanity, free and respected among the stars. Representatives of the Interstellar Coalition, President Yoongi began, his voice carrying through the silent chamber. We gather here today to mark the end of one era and the beginning of another. The Galactic Assembly, which ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years, is officially dissolved. In its place, we establish something new. The representatives listened in silence. There were over 100 species present, including many that had once voted to ban Earth. They sat alongside the 31 species that had joined humanity during the war. Creatures of every shape and size, united by a common belief. The Interstellar Coalition will be built on a simple principle, Yoongi continued. No species will ever be banned from the stars. No world will ever be blockaded. No people will ever be left to die because others fear them. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us. He paused, looking around the chamber. I will not pretend that this will be easy. Many of you fought against us. Many of us lost friends and family to your weapons. The wounds of this war will take generations to heal. But we did not fight this war to become like those who oppressed us. We fought it to prove that a better galaxy is possible. In the audience, Grand Admiral Velith sat among the former assembly leaders. He had been given a choice after the war. He could face trial for his role in the conflict, or he could help build the new order. He had chosen to help. The humans had accepted his choice without hesitation. He still did not fully understand them. He had spent 5 years fighting humans, watching them do impossible things, and he still could not predict what they would do next. But he was beginning to understand why they did what they did. They believed in second chances. The Coalition Council will include permanent seats for Earth and for the 17 species. Who stood with us from the beginning, Yoongi announced. But every other seat will be elected by the full membership. Every species, from the largest empire to the smallest colony, will have a voice. Power will not be inherited or taken. It will be earned through service and trust. The representatives murmured among themselves. This was different from anything the galaxy had known. The assembly had been controlled by the oldest and most powerful species. The coalition would be controlled by whoever could convince others to follow them. It was chaotic. It was uncertain. It was very, very human. After the ceremony, Sung Ho Lee walked through the corridors of the station, looking for a quiet place to think. He found it in an observation deck on the lower level. A small room with windows looking down at Earth. The planet was blue and green and beautiful, just as it had always been. But Sung-ho knew it was different now. The secret shipyards were empty. The hidden bases were being converted to civilian use. The weapons that had won the war were being stored away, hopefully never to be used again. He was 70 now, too old for active command. After the war, he had been offered a dozen different positions: Admiral of the Fleet, Governor of a colony world, Ambassador to the former assembly species. He had turned them all down. Captain Lee. He turned to find Ming-Yi Han standing in the doorway. She was older too, her sharp eyes softened by the years. She had run the intelligence operations that had given humanity its crucial advantages. Without her, the war might have ended very differently. "Just Sung-ho now," he said. "I retired, remember?" Ming-Yi smiled and walked over to stand beside him. "I retired too. What are you going to do now?" Sung-ho looked down at Earth. There is a colony world on the edge of the old assembly territory. A mixed settlement, humans and Tessari and Morvani living together. They need teachers. I thought I might go there, share some history with the young ones. History. Yes, the story of how a small, angry, brilliant species refused to be erased. How they built an impossible fleet in the shadows. How they fought a war they were not supposed to win and won it in a way that changed everything. Minji nodded slowly. "That is a good story. It is the best story I know." They stood together in silence, watching Earth turn below them. On the planet's surface, in a garden near the city of Seoul, Minister Yoona Shin planted the last tree in a memorial grove. Each tree represented someone who had died in the war. Human soldiers, coalition allies, even civilians from enemy worlds who had been caught in the fighting. There were no separate sections for different species. They were all planted together, their roots growing into the same soil. The inscription at the entrance to the grove was simple: "They voted to forget us." We chose to remember everything. Yoona stepped back and looked at the trees. They were young now, barely taller than a person. But in 100 years, they would be a forest. In 1,000 years, they would be ancient. And as long as they stood, the galaxy would remember what had happened here. Remember the fear that had led to cruelty. Remember the courage that had led to survival. Remember the mercy that had led to peace. Kong found her father sitting on a bench near the memorial. Taiwu was very old now, his body tired, but his eyes were still sharp. He was wearing civilian clothes, something she had rarely seen in her entire life. "Father," she said, sitting down beside him, "how are you feeling?" Taiwu smiled. "I am feeling old. But also, satisfied. I never thought I would see this day. When I stood in that assembly hall and told them that they had chosen poorly, I was not sure we could actually win. I just knew we had to try. We did more than try." "Yes," looked at his daughter with pride. "You did more than try. You and Sung-ho and Hyun-woo and all the others. I just planted the seed. You grew it into something magnificent." They sat together as the sun set over the garden, casting long shadows between the memorial trees. "What happens now?" Gion asked. Taiwu closed his eyes. "Now we do the hardest thing of all. We live up to what we promised. We build a galaxy where our grandchildren and their grandchildren can grow up without fear. We prove that the mercy we showed was not weakness, but strength. We become worthy of the victory we won. Do you think we can do it?" The old admiral opened his eyes and looked at the stars appearing in the darkening sky. "I think we are humans," he said. "We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have destroyed us. We have been underestimated by every species we have ever encountered. And every time they counted us out, we found a way to prove them wrong." He reached over and took his daughter's hand. "So yes, I think we can do it. Because we do not know how to give up. It is simply not in our nature." Far above them, the lights of the new coalition station shone among the stars. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, beings of every shape and size looked up at those same stars and wondered what the future would bring for the first time in galactic history. That future was not controlled by the old and the powerful. It belonged to everyone. It belonged to the small, angry, brilliant species that had refused to be erased. It belonged to humanity, and they were just getting started.